Millionaire watched 20 experts fail. Then a 6-year-old orphan girl solved a 3.2B problem in 10 seconds, leaving him shocked and changing her life forever. Before we dive into this moving story of sadness and isolation, drop a comment with your location and subscribe for more emotional content. The explosion shattered the morning silence like thunder from hell itself, sending glass fragments cascading from the 47th floor of the Davidson Industries Tower in a deadly rain that sparkled like diamonds in the early sunlight. Inside his private office, tech billionaire Marcus Davidson stood frozen in absolute horror, staring at the smoldering remains of what had been his most prized possession. A $3.2 billion quantum security vault that had just self-destructed in a spectacular display of sparks, twisted metal, and technological devastation that defied all logic and engineering expectations. The vault had been more than just a storage system. It was the crown jewel of his empire, containing decades of revolutionary research, breakthrough technologies, and most importantly, the only existing cure for his daughter Emma's rare genetic condition. Now it lay in ruins, its impenetrable walls somehow intact, but its access systems completely destroyed, leaving everything inside sealed behind digital barriers that seemed impossible to breach. "Sir, are you injured?" His assistant, Patricia Williams, rushed in through the smoke-filled doorway, her face pale with terror as she navigated through the debris scattered across the imported Italian marble floor like a minefield of destruction. The acrid smell of burning circuits filled the air like a toxic fog, mixing with the scent of melted plastic and superheated metal, while emergency alarms blared throughout the building with deafening intensity that seemed to echo the chaos in Marcus's heart. Security personnel flooded the office within minutes, their heavy boots crunching on broken glass as they secured the perimeter with military precision. Fire suppression systems engaged automatically, filling the room with clouds of chemical retardant that made breathing difficult and visibility nearly impossible. Through it all, Marcus stood transfixed, unable to process the magnitude of what had just occurred. Marcus's hands trembled uncontrollably as he surveyed the devastation that surrounded him like a nightmare made horrifyingly real. 20 years of his life's work, stored in that supposedly impenetrable vault. Revolutionary technology that could change the world forever, medical breakthroughs that could save millions of lives, and most crucially, the genetic therapy that represented Emma's only hope for survival. All of it now locked away behind barriers that his own genius had created but could no longer control. "The backup systems," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the chaos that engulfed them like a living thing. His throat felt raw from the smoke, and his words came out as a desperate rasp. "Please tell me the backup systems engaged properly. Tell me we didn't lose everything." Patricia's silence was deafening, more terrifying than any scream could have been. She shook her head slowly, tears forming in her eyes as the devastating reality began to sink in with crushing weight. Her hands shook as she consulted her tablet, reading reports that seemed to grow worse with each passing second. The quantum encryption matrix, it's completely fried beyond any hope of conventional repair. The fail-safe mechanisms triggered a total lockdown protocol that we've never seen before. Everything inside is now sealed behind a digital wall, so complex that our best engineers are calling it mathematically impossible to breach using current technology. The words hit Marcus like physical blows, each syllable driving home the horrifying reality of his situation. "Get me Dr. Harrison," he interrupted, his voice gaining strength through sheer desperation as his mind raced through possibilities, connections, and potential solutions. "Get me every cryptographer in the country, every security expert we know, every genius who's ever worked with quantum encryption. I don't care what it costs or how long it takes. Offer them anything, money, research partnerships, whatever they want." As firefighters stormed into the office with their heavy equipment and emergency protocols, their faces grim behind protective masks, Marcus stared at the vault's twisted metal frame with growing horror and desperate determination. The outer structure remained intact, a testament to the incredible engineering that had gone into its construction. But the access systems were completely destroyed, leaving no conventional way to reach what lay inside. Inside that impenetrable chamber lay not just his fortune or his business empire, but something infinitely more precious: the cure for his daughter Emma's rare genetic condition, a revolutionary treatment that existed nowhere else in the world. The research had taken 15 years to develop, involving collaboration with the world's leading geneticists, and represented the only hope for Emma's survival. Without access to that research, Emma had less than 6 months to live, and every second that passed brought her closer to a fate he absolutely refused to accept. The billionaire's empire, built over decades of innovation and calculated risks, meant nothing if he couldn't save his little girl. But first, he had to crack a code that his own brilliant engineers claimed was mathematically impossible to break. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had created the perfect security system, designed to be absolutely impenetrable, and now it might cost him everything that truly mattered in his life. Standing in the wreckage of his office, surrounded by the chaos of emergency responders and the acrid smell of destruction, Marcus Davidson faced the greatest challenge of his life. He was a man who had built an empire by solving impossible problems. But now he faced a puzzle that seemed to have no solution, and his daughter's life hung in the balance. Dr. Benjamin Harrison, MIT's most celebrated cryptographer and a man whose reputation for solving impossible puzzles was legendary throughout the academic and technological worlds, pushed his wire-rimmed glasses up his nose and sighed deeply, his exhaustion evident in every line of his weathered face. Dark circles under his eyes told the story of countless sleepless nights, and his usually immaculate appearance had given way to rumpled clothes and unkempt hair that spoke of a man pushed beyond his limits. "Marcus, I've been at this for 72 hours straight, running every algorithm I know, and several I invented specifically for this problem," he said, his voice hoarse from exhaustion and frustration. "The quantum encryption isn't just complex, it's revolutionary, beyond anything I've encountered in 30 years of cryptography and computer science. Your engineers created something that adapts and evolves every nanosecond, learning from each attempt to breach it and becoming stronger with every failed attack." The temporary office Marcus had set up 3 floors below the disaster zone had become a command center of desperate activity. Whiteboards covered every wall, filled with complex mathematical equations, quantum theory diagrams, and algorithmic approaches that had all led to dead ends. Cables snaked across the floor, connecting multiple computer systems that hummed with constant processing power, their screens displaying streams of data that represented humanity's best efforts to crack the impossible code. Marcus paced frantically around the space, his expensive Italian shoes wearing a path in the carpet as his mind refused to accept defeat. The vault remained sealed above them, its digital locks growing more sophisticated by the hour, like a living thing that learned and adapted with frightening intelligence. "There has to be a way, Ben. I refuse to accept that it's impossible. My daughter's life depends on getting into that vault. 20 specialists have failed, but there has to be someone, somewhere, who can find a solution to this nightmare." The team of experts surrounding them represented the pinnacle of human intelligence in the field of encryption and quantum computing. Dr. Sarah Chen from Stanford had flown in specifically to tackle the quantum matrix problem. Professor James Mitchell from Oxford had contributed his expertise in advanced cryptography. Even Dr. Yuki Tanaka from Tokyo University, considered the world's leading expert in quantum algorithms, had joined their desperate effort via secure video connection. "The mathematical probability of cracking this code is virtually zero," Dr. Harrison interrupted, his voice heavy with professional defeat and personal frustration. "The quantum matrix creates billions of possible combinations every second. each one more complex than the last. It's not just generating random combinations, it's creating new mathematical relationships and cryptographic protocols that didn't exist before. It would take our most advanced supercomputers approximately 47 years to run through all the current possibilities, and by then the system will have evolved exponentially beyond our current understanding of mathematics and computing. The weight of those words settled over Marcus like a suffocating blanket of despair. 47 years. Emma didn't have 47 days, let alone years. Her rare genetic condition was aggressive and unforgiving, and without the specialized treatment locked in the vault, her young body would begin shutting down within months. He slumped into his leather chair, feeling older than his 45 years, as the reality of his situation crashed over him in devastating waves. Dr. Chen looked up from her computer terminal, her expression grim. We've tried brute force attacks, algorithmic predictions, quantum tunneling protocols, and even attempted to reverse engineer the original programming. The system seems to anticipate every approach we take and adapts accordingly. It's almost as if it's alive, learning from our attempts and becoming stronger with each failure. Professor Mitchell nodded grimly from his position at another workstation. The encryption doesn't just protect the contents, it actively fights back against intrusion attempts. I've never seen anything like it in decades of security research. It's not just a lock, it's an intelligent guardian that seems to understand the value of what it's protecting. A soft knock interrupted their grim conversation, cutting through the tension like a knife. Patricia peered through the door, her expression uncertain and confused, carrying something in her demeanor that suggested the unexpected. Mr. Davidson, there's a situation downstairs in the main lobby. The police brought someone who claims she can help with your vault problem. It's quite unusual, sir, and frankly I'm not sure what to make of it. Marcus's laugh was bitter and hollow, the sound of a man pushed beyond his breaking point and grasping at any possible straw. Patricia, we've had fortune-tellers, con artists, self-proclaimed geniuses, conspiracy theorists, and every delusional person in the city trying to get near that vault since news of the incident broke. I don't have time for another charlatan promising miracles they can't deliver. The parade of supposed experts and opportunists had been endless and exhausting. Religious leaders claiming divine intervention could open the vault, street magicians insisting they understood the secrets of technology, and dozens of individuals who seemed to believe that confidence alone could substitute for actual knowledge. Each interruption had cost precious time and emotional energy that Marcus couldn't afford to waste. Sir, Patricia's voice was barely a whisper, her words carrying an odd mixture of confusion and wonder that made everyone in the room look up from their work. It's a 6-year-old girl. She walked here alone from St. Mary's Children's Home and told security she could open your vault in 10 seconds. She's different, Mr. Davidson. There's something about her that's hard to explain. The room fell silent except for the distant hum of the building's ventilation system and the soft clicking of computer keyboards as processing continued in the background. Dr. Harrison removed his glasses, cleaning them slowly as his scientific mind struggled to process this information. A child? Marcus, surely you don't think a 6-year-old could possibly understand quantum encryption mathematics? This isn't a fairy tale where magic solves complex problems. But Marcus was already moving toward the door, something indefinable pulling him forward like an invisible thread of hope. Emma's face flashed through his mind, his brilliant, brave daughter, who had always seen solutions where others saw impossibilities, who had approached problems with a unique perspective that often surprised even him. Bring her up immediately, if there's even the smallest chance. Dr. Chen looked skeptical. Marcus, with all due respect, we're dealing with quantum physics and advanced cryptography here. A child couldn't possibly have the mathematical background necessary to understand what we're facing. Maybe that's exactly the point, Marcus said quietly, his hand on the doorknob. Maybe we've been thinking about this all wrong. Lucy Chen sat perfectly still in the oversized leather chair in Marcus's temporary office, her small legs dangling inches from the floor like a porcelain doll positioned in furniture made for giants. Her clothes were clean but obviously second-hand, a faded blue dress with careful patches that spoke of loving care despite limited resources, and worn sneakers that had seen better days, but were polished with evident pride and attention. Despite her humble appearance, her dark eyes held an intensity that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat, a depth of intelligence and understanding that seemed impossible in someone so young. The contrast between this small child and the room full of brilliant adults was striking. Where the experts looked haggard and defeated, Lucy appeared calm and composed, as if she possessed some secret knowledge that gave her confidence in the face of what others deemed impossible. Her posture was perfect, her attention focused, and there was something about her presence that seemed to change the very atmosphere of the room. "Mr. Davidson," she said in a clear, confident voice that seemed far too mature for her 6-year-old frame, each word carefully chosen and precisely delivered with a formality that was both charming and slightly unsettling. "I know you don't believe a kid like me can help with something so important and complicated. All these smart adults have been trying for days, and I'm just a little girl from the children's home. But I've been studying your vault's quantum encryption pattern since I saw the news report this morning on the old television in our common room at St. Mary's." Dr. Harrison leaned forward, intrigued despite his scientific skepticism and professional caution. The child's vocabulary and sentence structure were remarkably advanced for her age, suggesting an intelligence that might indeed be extraordinary. "Young lady, do you understand what quantum encryption actually means? It's not something they teach in elementary schools, and most adults find it difficult to grasp even the basic concepts." Lucy's smile was patient, almost sad, carrying a weight of knowledge and experience that seemed far beyond her years. "It means the lock changes its combination faster than most people can think, Dr. Harrison. The numbers and patterns shift constantly, creating new possibilities every fraction of a second. But patterns exist in everything, even in the most complex systems that seem random. Even in chaos, there are rhythms and mathematical relationships that most people overlook because they're thinking too hard instead of feeling the natural flow of the system." Marcus knelt beside her chair, studying her face with growing fascination. Something about this child reminded him powerfully of Emma. The same fearless intelligence, the same way of seeing the world through a completely different lens than other people, the same ability to find simple solutions to complex problems. "Lucy, where did you learn about encryption and computer programming? This isn't typical knowledge for someone your age, even for children who show exceptional academic ability." "At the children's home, there's an old computer in the library that nobody else uses because it's slow and outdated and doesn't run the games the other kids want to play. I taught myself programming when I was 4 years old because books and numbers made more sense to me than trying to make friends with the other children." Her voice carried a weight of loneliness that pierced Marcus's heart like a dagger, speaking of a brilliant mind trapped in circumstances that didn't nurture or understand her gifts. "Mathematics makes sense to me in ways that other things don't," she continued, her eyes distant as if remembering countless hours spent alone with numbers and equations. "People are complicated and unpredictable, but numbers and patterns are honest. They don't lie or change their minds or leave you behind. When I work with code, I can see the logic underneath everything, like looking at the skeleton inside a body." "But, sweetheart," Patricia interjected gently, her maternal instincts clearly touched by this unusual child who seemed so isolated despite her remarkable abilities. 20 of the world's brightest experts have tried for days without success. These are people with advanced degrees from the best universities, decades of experience with the most sophisticated technology available. How could you possibly succeed where they've failed? The question hung in the air like a challenge. and everyone in the room found themselves leaning forward, waiting for her response. Dr. Chen had stopped typing, Professor Mitchell had turned away from his equations, and even Dr. Tanaka on the video screen seemed to be paying closer attention to this unexpected development. "Because they're thinking like adults," Lucy interrupted, her eyes never leaving Marcus's face, holding his gaze with startling directness and unwavering confidence. "They're trying to outsmart the system with brute force and complex algorithms, throwing more and more complicated solutions at a problem that might not need complicated answers. But what if the solution isn't about being smarter or having more computing power or knowing more advanced mathematics? What if it's about thinking differently, about approaching the problem from an angle that experienced minds would never consider because they're too educated to see the simple truth?" Marcus felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the building's air conditioning. This wasn't the innocent babbling of a delusional child seeking attention or trying to insert herself into an adult situation she didn't understand. This was something else entirely, something that defied every logical explanation, but felt strangely, impossibly right in a way that spoke to his deepest instincts as both a father and an innovator. "Sometimes," Lucy continued, her voice taking on an almost mystical quality, "the hardest locks are opened by the smallest keys. Sometimes the most sophisticated systems have the simplest weaknesses. Your vault isn't just a machine, Mr. Davidson. It's something more, something that understands things that computers usually don't understand." The room had become completely silent, every adult hanging on the words of this extraordinary child who spoke with a wisdom that seemed to come from somewhere far beyond her 6 years of life. The elevator ride to the 47th floor felt eternal, each floor passing like a countdown to either triumph or devastating disappointment that would seal Emma's fate forever. The enclosed space seemed to pulse with tension as Lucy stood between Marcus and Dr. Harrison, her small hand firmly gripping a worn notebook filled with hand-drawn mathematical equations that looked surprisingly sophisticated despite their childish handwriting and the obvious use of crayons and pencils rather than professional mathematical notation. Security guards flanked them on both sides, their faces stern but curious as they accompanied this unprecedented group to what had become the most secure location in the building. Everyone was tense with anticipation and barely concealed skepticism about this unprecedented situation. But there was also something else, a strange sense of hope that seemed to emanate from the small girl at the center of their desperate mission. "Lucy," Marcus said softly, his voice heavy with the weight of everything that hung in the balance, every word carefully chosen because he needed her to understand the magnitude of what they were attempting. "I need you to understand something crucial before we go any further. Inside that vault is information that could save my daughter's life. Emma is very sick with a rare genetic condition that attacks her immune system, and without access to the research locked inside, she might not have much time left. The doctors have tried everything conventional medicine has to offer, but the cure we developed is the only thing that can help her now." "It will work," Lucy said with quiet certainty that seemed to come from some deep, unshakable place within her small frame, a confidence that was both reassuring and slightly unsettling in its absolute nature. "Mr. Davidson, your engineers made the system too perfect, too logical, too focused on keeping bad people out instead of letting good people in. Perfect systems have perfect weaknesses, and sometimes the most sophisticated locks can only be opened by the simplest keys that nobody thinks to try." As the elevator doors opened with a soft ding that seemed unnaturally loud in the tense silence, they were greeted by the sight of the destroyed office bathed in harsh emergency lighting that cast long shadows across the devastation. The vault stood in the center like a metallic monument to impossibility, its surface unmarked by the explosion that had devastated everything around it, a testament to the incredible engineering that had gone into its construction. its digital display cycling through millions of encryption codes per second in a hypnotic dance of numbers and symbols that hurt to look at directly. The contrast was striking. The office around the vault was destroyed, with broken glass, twisted metal, and burn marks covering every surface, while the vault itself remained pristine and untouched, as if it existed in its own protected dimension. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows that moved and shifted with each flicker, creating an almost supernatural atmosphere around the technological marvel that held their hopes and fears. Dr. Harrison immediately pulled up the diagnostic screens on his laptop, his fingers flying over the keyboard with practiced efficiency as streams of data filled multiple windows on his screen. The quantum matrix is currently generating approximately 2.3 billion possible combinations every second, he reported, his voice taking on the clinical tone of a scientist presenting data. The pattern randomizes completely every few seconds, making it theoretically impossible to predict or track using conventional computational methods. The processing power required to crack this would exceed anything currently available, even using the most advanced quantum computers in existence. Every 4.7 seconds, Lucy corrected calmly, approaching the vault without hesitation or fear, her small footsteps echoing in the damaged space with a confidence that seemed to belie her age and the magnitude of the challenge before them. But there's a gap, Dr. Harrison. A tiny pause between cycles where the system resets its base algorithm and returns to its original parameters for just a fraction of a second. Most people would miss it because they're focused on the complexity and the speed, but I've been watching the pattern since I got here, and I can see the rhythm underneath all the chaos. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs as he watched this extraordinary child study his impenetrable vault with the same casual confidence most kids would show examining a simple jigsaw puzzle. The incongruity was overwhelming. This small girl in her patched dress, standing before a $3 billion quantum security system that had defeated the combined efforts of 20 brilliant minds, acting as if she were simply looking at a door that needed the right key. "How could you possibly know that specific timing?" he asked, his voice filled with wonder and disbelief. "Our own engineers, the people who built this system, didn't catch that detail. We have diagnostic equipment worth millions of dollars, and none of it detected the pattern you're describing." Lucy turned to face him, her young face serious beyond her years, carrying an expression of someone who had seen too much disappointment to allow herself false hope, but who nonetheless believed in the possibility of miracles. "Because I've been watching the pattern since I arrived, Mr. Davidson, not just with my eyes, but with my heart. Your vault isn't just locked, it's trying to communicate. It's trying to tell you something important, something about love and protection and the real reason it was built, but everyone's been too busy trying to break it to actually listen to what it's saying." She placed her small hand on the vault's surface with surprising reverence, as if she were touching something sacred rather than a machine. Her eyes closed in concentration as she seemed to listen to music only she could hear, her breathing becoming slow and regular as she entered a state of focus that was remarkable for someone so young. The room held its collective breath as the 6-year-old orphan prepared to attempt what 20 brilliant minds had failed to achieve, their hopes and fears hanging in the air like electricity before a storm. Every adult present found themselves believing, despite all logic and reason, that somehow this child might possess the key to unlocking not just the vault, but the future itself. "Wait!" Dr. Harrison whispered urgently, his laptop screen suddenly showing erratic readings that made no scientific sense according to everything they understood about quantum mechanics and digital encryption. "Something's changing in the quantum field fluctuations. The oscillations they're actually slowing down. This shouldn't be possible according to everything we understand about the system's core programming and quantum physics principles." The diagnostic equipment throughout the room began registering changes that defied conventional explanation. Energy readings that had been chaotic and unpredictable for days were beginning to stabilize into recognizable patterns. Temperature sensors detected subtle shifts in the vault's surface heat signature, and electromagnetic field detectors were picking up rhythms that seemed almost organic in their regularity. Lucy kept her eyes closed, her small hand still pressed against the vault's cool metal surface, with gentle determination that spoke of absolute faith in something greater than technology or mathematical formulas. "The system recognizes innocence," she murmured, her voice barely audible above the hum of electronics and the breathing of the adults who surrounded her in fascinated silence. "It was programmed to respond to pure intention, not complex algorithms or brute force attacks. Your daughter understood something that all the experts missed when they were building their defenses." Marcus watched in complete amazement as the vault's frantic digital display began to stabilize. The chaotic stream of numbers gradually organizing itself into recognizable patterns that seemed to pulse with their own internal logic. The billions of combinations per second dropped to millions, then thousands, as if the system itself was calming down like a frightened animal learning to trust. "That's absolutely impossible," he breathed, his voice filled with wonder. "The system doesn't have emotional recognition protocols in its programming architecture." "Yes, it does," Lucy said, opening her eyes and looking directly at him with a gaze that seemed to see straight through to his soul. It passed all the layers of success and sophistication to the desperate father underneath. "You programmed it to protect something precious, something pure and innocent. The vault isn't just looking for the right mathematical code or the correct algorithmic sequence, Mr. Davidson. It's looking for the right heart, the right intentions, the kind of love that would move heaven and earth to protect what matters most." Patricia gasped audibly as the security monitors throughout the building began displaying the same message in bold letters that seemed to glow with their own inner light. "Pure intention protocol activated. Searching for authorized emotional signature. Love recognition system engaged." The message appeared on every screen in the building simultaneously, from the smallest tablet to the largest display monitors, as if the vault's influence was somehow spreading throughout the entire structure. Security personnel throughout the building reported the same phenomenon, creating a sense of wonder and impossibility that touched everyone who witnessed it. "I don't understand any of this," Dr. Harrison stammered, his scientific mind struggling desperately to process what he was witnessing through the lens of decades of training in logic and empirical observation. "There's no such protocol anywhere in the system specifications we reviewed. This goes against everything we know about quantum encryption and digital security systems. Machines don't recognize emotions. They respond to mathematics and logical commands." Dr. Chen had abandoned her computer entirely, staring at the vault with an expression of scientific wonder mixed with personal awe. "The energy signatures we're detecting don't match anything in our databases," she reported, her voice filled with excitement and confusion. "It's as if the system is operating on principles we haven't discovered yet." "Because it was hidden," Lucy explained patiently, her hand never leaving the vault as she spoke with the calm certainty of someone much older and wiser, buried so deep in the foundational code that only someone who wasn't trying to break it could find it. "Your daughter helped design this security system, didn't she, Mr. Davidson? She left something special inside the programming, something that goes beyond mathematics and enters the realm of love itself." Marcus's legs nearly gave out beneath him as the full implications of her words hit him like a physical blow that took his breath away. How could this child possibly know about Emma's involvement in the vault's creation? That had been their most closely guarded secret project, something they'd worked on together during Emma's good days, when the illness gave her enough strength and clarity to focus on mathematics and programming, and the kinds of abstract problems that fascinated her brilliant mind. Emma always said the best locks were opened with love, not force. Lucy continued, tears forming in her dark eyes as she spoke with impossible knowledge that seemed to come from direct connection to something beyond normal human understanding. She left a message for you inside the vault's core programming, Mr. Davidson. A message that could only be accessed by someone who understood that some problems can't be solved with genius alone. They have to be solved with hope and pure intentions and the kind of love that refuses to accept defeat. The vault's display suddenly went completely black, and for a moment that stretched like eternity, Marcus thought they had failed and that his desperate gamble had cost them their last chance. Then, slowly, new text began to appear in soft, glowing letters that seemed to be written in Emma's own handwriting. "Welcome home, Daddy. I knew you'd find the right person to help. Love always finds a way." The words hung in the air like a benediction, and every person in the room felt the presence of something greater than technology, something that spoke to the deepest truths about love, family, and the power of hope to overcome even the most impossible obstacles. For 10 heartbeats that felt like 10 hours, the room was silent except for the soft hum of electronics and the barely audible sound of grown men and women trying not to cry as they witnessed something that challenged everything they thought they knew about the relationship between technology and human emotion. The air itself seemed to shimmer with possibility, as if the very fabric of reality had been gently altered by the presence of something miraculous. Then, with a gentle click that seemed impossibly quiet after days of mechanical struggles and failed attempts by the world's brightest minds, the vault door began to open with the smooth precision of perfectly calibrated machinery that had been waiting patiently for exactly this moment. The sound was almost musical, like the first note of a symphony that had been written in the language of hope itself. Marcus staggered backward, his eyes wide with disbelief and overwhelming emotion, as the massive steel door swung open like the gates of heaven themselves, revealing treasures that went far beyond monetary value. "Lucy, how did you know?" he whispered, his voice breaking with the weight of gratitude and wonder. How could you possibly have known about Emma's hidden protocols and the emotional security system she built into the quantum matrix? "I listened," she said simply, stepping away from the vault as its contents were revealed in all their glory, bathed in soft light that seemed to come from within the chamber itself. "Sometimes the hardest problems have the simplest solutions, Mr. Davidson. Sometimes you just have to stop trying to be so smart and start trying to understand what really matters. Love speaks its own language, and children are often better at hearing it than adults who have forgotten how to believe in impossible things." Inside the vault, holographic displays flickered to life with dazzling brightness, revealing terabytes of advanced medical research that represented decades of collaborative effort. Revolutionary technologies that could change the world in ways both profound and practical, and in the center of it all, a video file labeled "For Daddy When You Need Hope Most. Play When Love Finds the Key." The holographic displays showed research into genetic therapy that was years ahead of anything currently available. Breakthrough technologies in quantum computing that would revolutionize artificial intelligence, clean energy solutions that could solve global warming, and medical devices that could cure diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia. But all of it paled in comparison to what appeared on the central screen. Emma's face appeared on the display, weak but radiating love and intelligence that filled the room with warmth, recorded just weeks before her condition had worsened dramatically, but clearly planned for exactly this moment. Her voice filled the room with the kind of warmth that had been missing for too long, carrying with it all the love and hope that a brilliant child could pour into her final gift to her father. "Hi, Daddy. If you're seeing this, it means something went wrong with our vault. But don't worry. I built a special key into the system just in case something like this happened. It can only be opened by someone with a pure heart, someone who believes in hope more than logic, someone who sees possibilities where others see only problems, and who understands that love is the most powerful force in the universe." Marcus fell to his knees on the debris-covered floor, tears streaming down his face without shame, as his daughter's beloved voice washed over him like a healing balm that touched the deepest wounds in his heart. "I hid the real access protocol where only a child would think to look, in the space between fear and faith, between desperation and hope, in the place where love lives when everything else seems impossible. I love you, Daddy, more than all the stars in the sky and all the numbers in mathematics. Save as many people as you can with what we built together. And remember that the best solutions come from the smallest hands and the biggest hearts." Lucy walked over to Marcus and gently placed her small hand on his shoulder with the wisdom of someone far beyond her 6 years, her touch carrying a comfort that seemed to flow from some inexhaustible source of compassion. "Mr. Davidson, your daughter knew you'd find a way to save her and help others too. She just needed someone small enough to fit through the cracks in an impossible problem, someone who could see love where others only saw mathematics, and who wasn't afraid to believe in miracles." Dr. Harrison was frantically scanning the vault's contents with his portable equipment, his voice shaking with excitement and scientific wonder that made him sound decades younger. "Marcus, this is absolutely extraordinary. The medical research alone could revolutionize healthcare for generations. The quantum computing advances could solve climate change, cure diseases, explore space in ways we never imagined. The breakthrough technologies stored here, this could literally change the world and save millions of lives." The displays showed cure protocols for dozens of rare genetic conditions, revolutionary cancer treatments that worked at the cellular level, artificial organs that could be grown from a patient's own DNA, and brain interface technologies that could help paralyzed patients walk again. It was a treasure trove of human advancement that represented the culmination of decades of research and billions of dollars in development. Lucy's smile was mysterious and knowing, carrying secrets far too deep for her 6 years, but somehow perfectly natural on her young face, as if she had always known that this moment would come. "Some children see patterns that adults miss, Dr. Harrison. Sometimes being forgotten by the world means you notice things that others overlook. Sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest truths. And sometimes what the world calls impossible is just waiting for someone who still believes in magic." As Marcus stood on unsteady legs, clutching printouts of the medical data that would save Emma's life and potentially transform the lives of millions of others, he realized that this remarkable little girl had just changed everything, not just for his family, but potentially for the entire world. The genetic therapy protocols alone could help thousands of children with rare conditions, and the other technologies could address some of humanity's greatest challenges. But who was Lucy Chen really? And how had she known exactly what to do when the world's greatest experts had failed? How had she understood Emma's hidden programming when even the engineers who built the system had been unaware of its existence? The biggest question of all remained unspoken, but hung in the air like electricity. What other impossible problems could this extraordinary child solve? And where did her remarkable abilities truly come from? The vault was open, revealing treasures beyond imagination, but the mystery of Lucy was just beginning to unfold, promising revelations that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the relationship between innocence, intelligence, and the power of love to overcome any obstacle. The Medical Research Center at Davidson Industries had never seen activity like this in its 20-year history of groundbreaking scientific research. Within hours of opening the vault, Marcus had assembled the world's leading geneticists, oncologists, and biomedical engineers, flying them in from every corner of the globe with promises of unlimited research funding and access to revolutionary technology that could change the course of medical history. The facility buzzed with excitement as brilliant minds examined Emma's groundbreaking genetic therapy protocols with instruments worth millions of dollars. Lucy stood in the observation deck overlooking the main laboratory, her small figure dwarfed by the massive windows that provided a panoramic view of the most advanced medical facility on the planet. She watched the scientists work with an intensity that made the adults uncomfortable, her small hands pressed against the reinforced glass as she studied their every movement with an analytical precision that seemed impossible for someone her age. Her dark eyes tracked patterns and connections that seemed invisible to everyone else, processing information in ways that defied conventional understanding. "Mr. Davidson," she said quietly, her voice carrying a note of concern that immediately commanded attention from everyone in the observation area. "The cure isn't complete yet. Your daughter left something unfinished, something crucial that everyone is missing." Dr. Sarah Martinez, the lead geneticist who had flown in from Johns Hopkins specifically for this project, looked up from her high-powered microscope with deep concern etched across her weathered face. She had spent 30 years studying genetic disorders and had never encountered research as advanced as Emma's protocols. "What do you mean, Lucy?" "The protocols are detailed and comprehensive, more advanced than anything we've seen in decades of genetic research. We have everything we need to begin Emma's treatment immediately. The cellular repair sequences, the DNA modification protocols, everything is perfectly documented." "No." Lucy shook her head with certainty that belied her age, her voice carrying the same unwavering confidence that had allowed her to open an impossible vault when 20 experts had failed. Emma knew she was running out of time when she created these protocols. She was getting sicker every day, and she was afraid she might not live long enough to finish her work. She left gaps in the formula deliberately, places where only someone who understood her heart and her unique way of thinking could fill in the missing pieces. The genetic sequence is incomplete by design, like a puzzle with the most important pieces hidden in plain sight. Marcus felt his blood run cold as the implications of Lucy's words sank in like stones dropping into still water. "Incomplete, but we've already started preparing the treatment chambers, calibrating the equipment, preparing the genetic modification protocols. If something's missing from the formula..." Lucy walked to the nearest computer terminal with purpose and determination, pulling up a chair so she could reach the keyboard properly. She began typing with surprising speed and accuracy, her small fingers dancing across the keyboard as complex genetic codes and mathematical equations appeared on the screen in rapid succession. The adults gathered around, watching in amazement as she navigated through Emma's research with an intuitive understanding that seemed impossible. Emma was scared she might die before finishing the work, so she hid the final sequences in riddles and patterns that only someone who thought exactly like her could solve, Lucy explained as she worked. She encoded them in music compositions that looked like simple children's songs, but contain frequency patterns corresponding to DNA repair sequences. She hid them in mathematical poetry that appears to be abstract art, but reveals geometric codes when viewed from the right perspective. She even embedded crucial information in the spacing between words in her research notes. The geneticists gathered around the screen in complete amazement as Lucy revealed hidden layers within Emma's research that they had completely overlooked despite their advanced training and sophisticated equipment. Mathematical equations that looked like simple children's games suddenly revealed themselves as sophisticated genetic algorithms when viewed from the correct angle. Musical compositions Emma had written contained frequency patterns that corresponded perfectly to DNA repair sequences, and abstract art pieces held geometric codes that unlocked cellular regeneration protocols. "This is absolutely incredible," Dr. Martinez whispered, her voice filled with professional awe and personal wonder. "How could you possibly understand these connections? This level of genetic engineering requires years of specialized education, advanced degrees from the world's top universities, and decades of research experience in the most sophisticated laboratories." Lucy's smile was sad but determined. carrying the weight of knowledge that seemed impossible for someone so young, but somehow felt completely natural in her presence. Because Emma and I think the same way, Dr. Martinez. We both see patterns where others see chaos. We both understand that the most important things are hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone who knows how to look with their heart instead of just their analytical mind. We both believe that love and science aren't separate things. They're different ways of understanding the same truth. Emma Davidson lay pale and weak in her specially equipped hospital bed, surrounded by the most advanced medical monitoring equipment that money could buy and the combined expertise of the world's leading pediatric specialists. Despite her physical frailty, her eyes sparked with intelligence and curiosity as she studied the small girl who had become the talk of the entire medical facility and the subject of countless conversations among the nursing staff and research teams. Lucy sat quietly in the corner chair, having insisted on meeting Emma before the treatment began, saying she needed to make sure the formula was right for Emma's specific spirit and unique life force. She had been remarkably persistent about this meeting, refusing to continue her work on the genetic therapy until she could speak with Emma personally. "You're the one who opened Daddy's vault," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper but filled with genuine curiosity and deep admiration. The effort of speaking was clearly exhausting, but her interest in this remarkable child was stronger than her physical weakness. "Everyone's talking about you throughout the hospital. The nurses, the doctors, even the security guards. They say you're special, like me, but different somehow. They say you solved an impossible puzzle that 20 experts couldn't crack." Lucy nodded, moving her chair closer to the bed with careful reverence, as if approaching something sacred. "Your daddy's vault was beautiful, Emma, the way you programmed it to respond to love and pure intention instead of just cold logic. It was like poetry written in computer code, like music translated into mathematics. It was the most elegant piece of programming I've ever seen." Emma's eyes widened with surprise and pure delight, the first real animation she had shown in weeks lighting up her pale face. "You understood the emotional protocols? But those were hidden so deep in the foundational code that even I wasn't completely sure they would work when activated. The mathematical theory was solid, but I'd never tested it. How did you see them when 20 experts with decades of experience couldn't find them?" "Because we're the same kind of different," Lucy said simply, her voice carrying a wisdom that seemed to come from far beyond her 6 years of life experience. "We both see the world differently than other people. We both understand that numbers and patterns aren't just cold mathematics. They're alive, they have feelings. They tell stories about love and hope and the invisible connections between all living things in the universe." The two girls talked for hours, sharing a connection that transcended age, circumstance, and the medical crisis that had brought them together in this sterile hospital environment. Emma explained the inspiration behind her genetic research, how she had dreamed of creating treatments that would help other children like herself, kids who were trapped in failing bodies, but whose minds soared beyond normal limitations and saw possibilities that others missed. Lucy shared her own experiences with pattern recognition and intuitive problem-solving, describing the profound loneliness of being different in a world that didn't understand or appreciate unusual gifts. "At the children's home, I always felt like I was speaking a different language," she confided, her voice soft with remembered pain. "When I tried to explain the patterns I saw in everything, in the way rain fell, in the rhythm of people's footsteps, in the mathematics hidden in everyday conversations, the other kids looked at me like I was crazy." "I know exactly what you mean," Emma replied, reaching out to take Lucy's small hand in her own. "Sometimes I think my brain works too fast for other people to follow. I see solutions to problems before I even understand what the problems are. It's like living in a world where everyone else is moving in slow motion." "Lucy," Emma said suddenly. gripping the smaller girl's hand with surprising strength, her voice taking on an urgent quality. "There's something wrong with the treatment formula. Not wrong exactly, but incomplete in a crucial way that could affect everything. I was too sick to finish the final calibrations before my condition worsened dramatically. The genetic therapy will work and stop the disease progression, but it won't be permanent unless someone adjusts the cellular regeneration sequences to account for the spiritual component of healing." Lucy nodded, as if she had been expecting this revelation all along, her expression both grave and hopeful. "I know. I could see the gaps in the code when I was studying it, spaces where something important was missing, but I think I understand how to fix them. Your research is brilliant, Emma, absolutely revolutionary and beyond anything the medical community has ever seen. But it needs one more element, something that goes beyond pure science into the realm of hope and the human spirit itself." The breakthrough came at 3 in the morning when Lucy suddenly sat up in the small cot the hospital staff had provided for her in Emma's room. Her eyes bright with excitement and understanding in the dim light filtering through the medical facility's windows. The night shift nurses had grown accustomed to seeing the small girl working at all hours, her mind apparently unable to rest when faced with such an important challenge. "I understand now," she whispered urgently, her voice filled with the thrill of discovery that comes when scattered pieces of a puzzle suddenly click into place. The missing piece isn't just scientific, it's deeply personal and spiritual. It has to do with what makes each person unique and worth saving. Emma stirred awake immediately, her enhanced sensitivity to her new friend's emotional state making her instantly alert, despite her physical weakness and the late hour. "What do you mean, Lucy? What did you figure out? I can feel your excitement. It's like electricity in the air." "Your cure works by repairing damaged DNA at the cellular level, rewriting the genetic code that controls how cells function and reproduce," Lucy explained, as she moved to the computer terminal with renewed energy. "But DNA carries more than just genetic information. It carries memories, experiences, emotional imprints, the very essence of who we are as unique individuals, with our own dreams and fears and loves. The therapy will heal your body perfectly, but it needs a corresponding emotional component to heal your spirit and make the changes permanent at the deepest level." Lucy began typing rapidly, her small fingers flying across the keyboard as she accessed Emma's research files and began revealing connections that had been invisible to the adult researchers, despite their sophisticated equipment and years of training. Every person who receives this treatment needs a unique emotional key, something that connects them to their deepest source of strength, hope, and life force. It's not enough to fix the biology, you have to heal the whole person. Dr. Martinez was called in urgently from her temporary quarters in the hospital, along with the entire research team who had been working around the clock. They arrived still in their pajamas and robes, but their exhaustion evaporated when they saw what Lucy was demonstrating on the computer screens. They watched in absolute astonishment as she revealed hidden aspects of the genetic therapy that they had never considered, despite their decades of combined experience and prestigious educational backgrounds. The treatment protocols need to be personalized, not just biologically and genetically, but emotionally and spiritually, Lucy explained with remarkable clarity for someone so young, her voice taking on the confident tone of a seasoned researcher presenting groundbreaking findings. Each patient's DNA repair sequences need to be calibrated to their individual emotional signature, their personal reasons for wanting to live and thrive. For Emma, the key is her love for her father and her passionate desire to help other children who are suffering like she has suffered, Lucy continued, pulling up specific genetic sequences and showing how they could be modified to respond to Emma's unique emotional profile. For other patients it will be different. Their connection to family, their dreams for the future, their determination to overcome adversity, their capacity for love and hope. The cure doesn't just heal the body, it strengthens the will to live and the connection to what makes life meaningful. Marcus arrived as Lucy was finishing her explanation, his face showing the exhaustion of a man who hadn't slept properly in days, but whose eyes were bright with renewed hope and amazement. Are you saying the treatment will work significantly better if we incorporate Emma's personal motivations and emotional connections into the therapy itself? Exactly, Lucy said with a smile that seemed far too wise for her age, but somehow perfectly appropriate for the magnitude of what she had discovered. The human spirit is the most powerful healing force in the universe, Mr. Davidson. Your daughter understood this instinctively, even if she didn't have time to fully develop the concept before her illness progressed. She knew that healing isn't just about fixing what's broken, it's about making the whole person stronger than they were before. 2 weeks later, Emma was sitting up in bed for the first time in months. Color returned to her cheeks and strength flowing back into her young body with each passing day, like sunlight gradually illuminating a room that had been dark for too long. The genetic therapy had worked beyond all expectations. But the emotional healing component that Lucy had added had created changes that surprised everyone, especially the girls themselves. "I can feel what you're feeling," Emma told Lucy during one of their daily conversations, her voice filled with wonder and slight concern about this unexpected development. "When you're sad or excited or confused about something, I sense it somehow, like there's an invisible connection between our minds that grows stronger every day. Is that normal? Should we be worried about it?" Lucy nodded thoughtfully, her expression serene despite the unusual nature of their experience. She had been documenting these changes in her worn notebook, trying to understand what was happening to them both. "I feel it too, Emma. When the treatment healed your DNA, it created a kind of bridge between us. We were already similar in how we think and see the world. But now we're connected in a deeper way that goes beyond normal friendship or even family bonds." Dr. Martinez had been documenting these unusual side effects with fascination and professional concern, recording every detail for future research and consulting with specialists around the world. "The girls seemed to be developing some form of empathic connection," she reported to Marcus during their daily briefings in his temporary office. "It's not telepathy exactly, but they're demonstrating a remarkable ability to sense each other's emotional states and even share certain cognitive processes. They seem to complement each other's thinking in ways we've never observed before." Marcus watched his daughter and Lucy work together on a complex mathematical problem that would challenge graduate students, their minds seeming to complement each other perfectly as they reached solutions through intuitive leaps that defied conventional logic. They would start sentences that the other would finish, solve different parts of the same equation simultaneously, and demonstrate a level of intellectual synchronization that seemed almost supernatural. "Is this dangerous? Should we be concerned about these changes?" Marcus asked, his parental instincts warring with his wonder at what he was witnessing. "On the contrary," Dr. Martinez replied, her excitement evident in every word. "Their cognitive abilities seem to be enhanced exponentially by the connection. Emma's IQ has increased significantly since the treatment began, and Lucy's already remarkable problem-solving capabilities are becoming even more extraordinary. Whatever's happening between them, it appears to be profoundly beneficial for both girls." The two girls had become inseparable, spending hours discussing advanced mathematics, computer programming, quantum physics, and complex theories about the nature of consciousness and intelligence. Their conversations were recorded by researchers who struggled to understand the advanced concepts they explored with such natural ease, often discussing ideas that wouldn't be out of place in graduate-level university courses. "We're not just friends," Emma explained to her father one evening as Lucy slept peacefully in the nearby cot, her small face relaxed in peaceful dreams. "We're like two parts of the same extraordinary mind that were separated at birth and have finally found each other again. When we work together, We can solve problems that neither of us could handle alone, see patterns that are invisible when we're apart. It's like having a sister, Emma continued, her voice filled with wonder and gratitude, but a sister who understands how my mind works, who sees the world the same way I do, who doesn't think I'm strange for being different. The answer to their growing questions came sooner than expected. Within a month of Emma's complete recovery, reports began arriving from around the world of children displaying extraordinary abilities in mathematics, pattern recognition, and intuitive problem-solving. Dr. Martinez's published research on the genetic therapy had included detailed mentions of Lucy's contributions, sparking intense interest from researchers studying gifted children globally and creating a network of communication between institutions that had never collaborated before. There's a 7-year-old girl in Tokyo who solved a quantum physics problem that had stumped university professors for months, Patricia reported as she brought Marcus the latest batch of messages and emails from around the world. A 9-year-old boy in London who developed a new encryption algorithm that cybersecurity experts can't crack even with their most sophisticated equipment. A 6-year-old in Sao Paulo who predicted earthquake patterns with unprecedented accuracy, potentially saving thousands of lives. Emma and Lucy sat together in Marcus's office, both now healthy and more brilliant than ever, their enhanced cognitive abilities allowing them to process information at remarkable speeds, while maintaining the emotional wisdom that made them special. They had been studying the reports from around the world, making connections that the adult researchers had missed. "They're like us," Lucy said with absolute certainty, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had found her tribe. "They think in patterns and see connections that other people miss. But most of them are probably confused and lonely, just like I was before I found you and Emma. They probably don't understand why they're different or how to use their gifts. We have to help them," Emma added, her voice filled with determination and compassion that reflected her deep understanding of what it meant to feel isolated by exceptional abilities. "The same way Lucy helped save my life by seeing what everyone else missed, we can help these children develop their abilities and use them to solve important problems that could benefit everyone." Marcus looked at his daughter, now healthy and more brilliant than ever, and at Lucy, the remarkable little girl who had changed everything. "What are you suggesting? Some kind of special school for extraordinarily gifted children?" "More than a school," Lucy replied, her eyes bright with possibility and vision. "A place where children like us can work together on projects that could help heal the world. We could develop new medical treatments, solve environmental problems, create technologies that make life better for everyone. We could prove that being different isn't a weakness, it's humanity's greatest strength." The idea was both thrilling and daunting in its scope and potential impact. Marcus had the financial resources to create such an institution, and the genetic therapy research could provide the foundation for understanding and enhancing these unusual abilities. But bringing together children with such extraordinary capabilities would also present unprecedented challenges and responsibilities. "There's something else," Emma said quietly, her voice taking on the tone she used when discussing her most important discoveries. "Lucy and I have been working on the genetic therapy research, and we think we understand why some children develop these enhanced pattern recognition abilities. It's related to specific genetic markers that affect brain development, markers that can be activated under certain stress conditions." "You mean these abilities aren't just random?" Marcus asked, his mind racing with the implications of what his daughter was suggesting. "Not random at all," Lucy confirmed, her voice filled with the excitement of scientific discovery. "They're part of human evolution, dormant capabilities that emerge when children face significant challenges and have the right genetic predisposition. Stress, isolation, and adversity can actually trigger the development of these enhanced cognitive abilities as a survival mechanism." 6 months later, the Davidson Institute for Advanced Young Minds opened its doors to 37 children from around the world. each carefully selected for their extraordinary pattern recognition abilities and intuitive problem-solving skills through a comprehensive evaluation process that considered not just intelligence, but emotional resilience and creative potential. The campus, built with Marcus's fortune, and designed according to Emma and Lucy's detailed specifications, looked more like a combination of playground and research facility than a traditional school, with laboratories that felt like discovery centers and classrooms that encouraged exploration and wonder. Emma, now completely healthy and serving as the Institute's youngest research director, stood with Lucy in the main laboratory, watching their fellow extraordinary children work on projects that would have challenged seasoned professionals with advanced degrees. The sight filled her with joy and pride. Children who had once felt isolated and misunderstood were now thriving in an environment that celebrated their unique gifts. "Remember when you told me the vault was trying to communicate?" she said to her best friend and intellectual partner, watching a group of 7-year-olds design a water purification system that could operate in remote areas without electricity. "Of course," Lucy replied, smiling as she observed another team developing a new approach to solar energy that could revolutionize renewable power generation. "Everything important is trying to communicate with us. We just have to learn how to listen with our hearts as well as our minds. The universe is full of patterns and connections, waiting for people who know how to see them." Marcus observed from the observation deck, marveling at what his daughter and Lucy had created together with the help of educators and researchers from around the world. The children weren't just studying advanced subjects. They were developing solutions to real-world problems with a creativity and insight that amazed the adult researchers who worked alongside them as collaborators rather than traditional teachers. Dr. Martinez, now the Institute's chief scientist, approached with the latest research findings, her face glowing with excitement. "The cognitive enhancement therapy based on Emma's genetic treatment is showing remarkable results. The children's abilities are developing even further when they work together in supportive environments. We're seeing increases in pattern recognition, creative problem-solving, and emotional intelligence that exceed all our projections. It's not just about making them smarter," Lucy explained, overhearing the conversation while watching a group of children develop an artificial intelligence system that could predict weather patterns with unprecedented accuracy. "It's about helping them understand that being different isn't something to hide or be ashamed of. It's a precious gift they can use to make the world better for everyone." The Institute's first major breakthrough came when a team of 8-year-olds developed a new approach to cancer treatment that combined genetic therapy with frequency-based cellular repair, potentially offering hope to millions of patients worldwide. Their second major success involved a group of 9-year-olds who created an early warning system for natural disasters that could save countless lives. But perhaps the most important achievement was simpler and more profound. 37 children who had felt isolated and different, their entire lives now understood that they weren't alone, that their unique abilities were valuable, and that together they could accomplish things that would benefit all of humanity. "You know what the best part is?" Emma asked Lucy as they watched the sunset from the Institute's roof garden, surrounded by other children whose brilliant minds were now focused on healing the world rather than simply surviving in it. "What's that?" Lucy replied, though her empathic connection to Emma meant she already knew the answer. "We proved that the most impossible problems really do have the simplest solutions. Sometimes all it takes is love, hope, and the courage to believe that even the smallest person can change everything." Lucy nodded, thinking back to that morning when she had walked alone to Davidson Industries, carrying nothing but faith and a worn notebook full of dreams. "And sometimes," she added softly, "the greatest treasures are hidden behind the strongest locks, waiting for someone with a pure heart to set them free." As the stars appeared overhead, the children of the Davidson Institute continued their work. Their brilliant minds united in the common purpose of healing a world that desperately needed their unique gifts, proving that love, hope, and extraordinary minds working together could overcome any obstacle. Millionaire panics after 900 Marcenter's cyber attack until a poor 7-year-old girl says something that breaks his heart. Together, they will touch your soul. Before we dive into this moving story of sadness and isolation, drop a comment with your location and subscribe for more emotional content. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the 42nd floor of the downtown Manhattan skyscraper as 28-year-old tech mogul Alexander Hayes threw his coffee mug against the wall. His hands trembled uncontrollably as he stared at the computer screen displaying numbers that made his stomach churn violently. $900 million. Gone. Vanished in a sophisticated cyber attack that had penetrated his company's most secure systems just hours ago, leaving behind a digital wasteland that threatened to destroy everything he had built. "This can't be happening," Alexander whispered hoarsely, running his fingers through his perfectly styled blonde hair for the 100th time that morning. His navy Armani suit, usually immaculate and pressed to perfection, was now wrinkled and disheveled from hours of frantic pacing around his expansive corner office. The young millionaire had built Hayes Technologies from absolutely nothing, transforming a small startup operation in his college dormitory into a billion-dollar empire before his 30th birthday. Now, watching his stock prices plummet in real time like stones thrown from a cliff, he felt like everything he had ever worked for was crumbling into dust before his very eyes. The massive floor-to-ceiling windows of his office offered a breathtaking view of the bustling city below. But Alexander couldn't see any of its beauty today. All he could focus on were the endless notifications flooding his multiple computer screens, each one bringing worse news than the last. News outlets were already picking up the story, and his phone hadn't stopped ringing for the past 3 hours. Board members, investors, clients, and reporters were all demanding answers that he simply didn't have. The office door creaked open slowly, and Maria Gonzalez, his longtime housekeeper and one of the few people he trusted completely, peeked in hesitantly. Her kind, weathered face showed deep concern as she took in the scene of destruction around the office. Papers were scattered everywhere. Multiple coffee cups sat abandoned on various surfaces, and the smell of stress and desperation hung heavy in the air. "Mr. Hayes, I'm so sorry to bother you during this terrible time, but—" She paused, seeing his devastated expression and the tears that had dried on his cheeks. Behind her, 2 small figures emerged from the shadows of the hallway like ghosts materializing from another world. 7-year-old Emma stood protectively in front of her baby brother Jake, who was barely walking at just 1 year old. Emma's long dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, secured with a rubber band that had seen better days, and her worn yellow dress had been carefully mended multiple times with different colored threads that told the story of their difficult circumstances. Despite their obvious poverty, there was something remarkable about the way she carried herself. A dignity and intelligence that seemed far beyond her tender years. Her bright brown eyes held a spark that made adults stop and take notice, a depth of understanding that was both beautiful and slightly unsettling. "Mama, why is the nice man crying?" Emma asked softly, her small hand gently holding Jake's chubby fingers while her eyes never left Alexander's face. There was genuine concern in her voice, the kind of empathy that came naturally to children who had experienced their own share of hardship and pain. Maria's eyes filled with tears as she watched her daughter's compassionate response to a stranger's suffering. "Misha, we shouldn't bother Mr. Hayes right now. He's having a very difficult day, and we should leave him alone to handle his important business." But Emma didn't move. Instead, she studied Alexander's face with the kind of intensity that made adults feel exposed and vulnerable, as if she could see straight through to their souls. She had always been different from other children her age. her mind working in ways that amazed and sometimes frightened those around her. While other children her age were playing with dolls and watching cartoons, Emma was reading technical manuals she found in the building's recycling bins, teaching herself complex concepts that college students struggled to understand. "The numbers on your screen," Emma said quietly, taking a tentative step closer to Alexander's massive mahogany desk. "They're going down really fast because someone took your money through the computer, right? Someone was very mean to you." Alexander looked up from his screens, genuinely surprised by the child's perceptive observation and mature understanding of the situation. Through his tears and exhaustion, he managed a weak smile, touched by her innocent concern for his welfare. "That's exactly right, sweetheart. A very bad person did something terrible to my company and hurt a lot of people in the process." Emma's expression grew serious as she studied the multiple monitors displaying the ongoing chaos. Stock charts plummeted like red waterfalls, emergency news alerts flashed urgent warnings in bright colors, and security protocols scrolled endlessly across the screens like digital prayers that weren't being answered. For a long moment, the 7-year-old girl stood perfectly still, her brilliant mind processing information at a speed that would have impressed seasoned cybersecurity experts with decades of experience. "I can fix it," she whispered, her words barely audible but carrying a weight that seemed to stop time itself. The silence in the room was absolutely deafening, broken only by the distant hum of the building's air conditioning system and the muffled sounds of traffic 42 floors below. Alexander stopped his frantic pacing immediately and turned to stare at the small girl who had just made what seemed like an utterly impossible claim. Maria gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth as she pulled both children closer to her protective embrace. Unsure of what her daughter was thinking, "Emma, what did you say?" Alexander asked, his voice barely audible as he struggled to process what he had just heard. He must have misunderstood. There was no way a 7-year-old child could have said what he thought she said. The 7-year-old's intelligent brown eyes never left the computer screens that continued to display his company's ongoing destruction. "I said I can fix it," she repeated with quiet confidence that sent chills down Alexander's spine. "I can bring your money back and stop the bad people who took it from you. I can make everything okay again." "Sweetheart, this is very complicated adult business," Alexander said gently, forcing himself to remain calm as he knelt down to Emma's eye level. His knees protested against the hard marble floor, but he wanted to look directly into her eyes when he explained why her offer, while touching, was impossible. "The best cybersecurity experts in the entire world are working on this problem right now, and they haven't been able to figure out how to fix it. These are people who went to the best universities and have been doing this kind of work for 20 or 30 years. They're looking in the wrong places," Emma interrupted, her young voice steady and certain in a way that made Alexander's blood run cold. "The attack didn't come from where they think it did. It didn't come from outside your building or from hackers in other countries. It came from inside your own system, but not from an employee like they're probably thinking. Someone planted a sleeping virus months and months ago, hiding it where no one would think to look, waiting for exactly the right moment to wake up and cause all this trouble." Alexander's blood ran cold as the implications of her words sank in. How could a 7-year-old child possibly know that crucial detail? The FBI's cybercrime unit had just finished briefing him on their preliminary findings less than an hour ago, and they hadn't even discovered that specific information yet. Their top investigators were still trying to determine whether the attack had come from outside the company or from within. And here was a child who seemed to understand the situation better than trained professionals. "Emma, how do you possibly know this?" he whispered, his voice shaking with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "And how can you see things that experts with all their training and experience can't see?" The little girl looked down at baby Jake, who was babbling softly and reaching for the bright yellow fabric of her worn dress with his tiny, chubby fingers. Her expression became sad and distant, as if she was remembering something painful that she rarely allowed herself to think about. Because I see patterns that others don't see, she explained quietly. Numbers and codes talk to me in a way they don't talk to other people. It's like they're speaking a special language that only I can understand. Mama says I'm special, but sometimes being special is really lonely because no one else sees the world the way I do. Maria's tears flowed freely now as she listened to her daughter explain the gift that had both amazed and isolated her throughout her short life. Mr. Hayes, I need to tell you something important about Emma, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. She's not like other children her age. She's never been like other children. When she was only 4 years old, she fixed our neighbor's computer that 3 different technicians couldn't repair, even after they worked on it for hours and hours. Last year, she helped the corner store owner figure out why his cash register system kept crashing every few days. She sees things in technology that adults with college degrees and years of training miss completely. Alexander's mind raced as he tried to process this information. Could it really be possible? Could this small child actually understand something that his team of highly paid experts had missed? The desperation in his chest grew stronger as he watched his company's value continue to plummet on the screens behind him. Each passing minute costing him millions of dollars and destroying the livelihoods of thousands of employees who depended on Hayes Technologies for their survival. Even if what you're saying is true, he said carefully, trying to keep his voice steady, why would you want to help me? You don't even know me. We've never met before today, and you don't owe me anything. Emma's expression grew incredibly sad as she looked around the luxurious office, taking in the expensive artwork, the imported leather furniture, and the crystal awards that decorated the shelves. Then she looked down at her own worn shoes that had holes in them and had been repaired with duct tape more than once. Because Jake and I haven't eaten anything in 2 whole days, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Mama lost her other job last week, and she's too proud to ask anyone for help, even when we're really hungry. I heard you talking to your assistant yesterday about how you give money to children's charities and help kids who don't have enough food or warm clothes. I thought maybe if I helped you, you might help us too. Her voice trailed off, but the weight of her words hung heavy in the air like a storm cloud. Alexander felt his heart breaking into 1,000,000 pieces as the reality of their desperate situation finally sank in completely. This brilliant little girl and her innocent baby brother were literally starving, and here he was, devastated about losing money while they couldn't even afford their next meal. Alexander stood up slowly, his legs shaking slightly as his mind reeled from everything he had just heard. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on him. Here he was, panicking about financial losses that wouldn't actually change his lifestyle in any meaningful way, while a hungry child was offering to save his empire with nothing but the hope of a meal in return. But there was something extraordinary in Emma's eyes, a spark of intelligence and determination unlike anything he had ever seen in someone so young, or even in most adults for that matter. Emma, he said softly, his voice thick with emotion, if you really think you can help me, I need you to understand something very important. This isn't just about my money or my company's stock price. If Hayes Technologies fails, if we can't recover from this attack, thousands and thousands of people will lose their jobs. Families with children just like you and Jake will suddenly have no income. The ripple effect will hurt so many innocent people who had nothing to do with what happened here today. The 7-year-old nodded solemnly, her mature understanding of the situation both impressive and heartbreaking. I understand completely, she said. That's exactly why I want to help you. It's not fair that bad people can hurt so many good families just because they're angry or greedy. Everyone deserves to feel safe and have enough food to eat. Alexander felt a lump forming in his throat as he realized that this child, who had every reason to be bitter about her own circumstances, was thinking about the welfare of complete strangers. Emma, what do you need from me? What would you want in return for your help? Emma's voice became barely a whisper, and she pulled Jake closer to her side, wrapping her thin arms around his small body protectively. I need you to promise me something really important. If I fix this, if I actually save your company and bring back all the money, you'll take care of Jake. Not me, just Jake. He's only a baby and he deserves a chance at a good life with someone who can give him everything he needs to grow up happy and healthy. The request hit Alexander like a physical blow to the chest, knocking the wind out of him completely. Emma, what are you saying? You want me to adopt your baby brother but not you. You want to be separated from the person you love most in the world. Tears began forming in Emma's bright brown eyes, but her voice remained steady and determined. Jake is all I have in this whole world, and I love him more than anything else that exists. But I'm smart enough to know that Mama can't take care of both of us properly, no matter how hard she tries. She works 16 hours a day sometimes, but it's still not enough money. If something bad happens to her, what will happen to Jake? He needs security, education, healthcare, and a real family that can give him opportunities I can't. Maria gasped, finally understanding the full scope of what Emma was proposing. Misha, no! I would never let anyone separate you two. You belong together. But Emma shook her head firmly. Mama, you know I'm right about this. Jake needs more than we can give him right now. This man has all the resources to give Jake everything. The best schools, doctors, food, clothes, toys, and a safe place to live. I can take care of myself because I'm smart and strong, but Jake can't. He's just a baby. Alexander felt tears forming in his own eyes as he witnessed what might have been the most selfless act he had ever seen in his entire life. This 7-year-old girl, who had nothing and was desperately hungry, was willing to sacrifice her own future and give up the person she loved most to ensure her baby brother had the best possible chance at a good life. Emma, I can't accept that arrangement, he said firmly, his voice growing stronger with conviction. If what you're saying is true, if you can really help me save my company, then I absolutely insist on helping both of you. I won't separate you from Jake under any circumstances. Emma's eyes widened with surprise and a flicker of hope that she had tried so hard to suppress. But that's not what I asked for. I just want Jake to be safe and happy and have everything he needs. And Jake will never be truly happy without his big sister who loves him so much, Alexander replied without hesitation. Besides, if you're as brilliant as you seem to be, just imagine what we could accomplish together. You could help so many people with your incredible gift. You could change the world, Emma. For the first time since entering his office, Emma smiled, a genuine, hopeful smile that seemed to light up her entire face and transform the atmosphere of the room from despair to possibility. The next few hours passed in a blur of disbelief, wonder, and barely controlled chaos. Alexander had made a decision that went against every logical, rational bone in his body. He was going to let a 7-year-old girl attempt to fix a $900 million cyber attack that had completely stumped his entire team of highly trained IT security professionals. His legal team would probably have him committed if they knew what he was considering, but something deep in his gut told him that Emma was exactly what she appeared to be, a genuine prodigy. Emma sat at his personal computer, her small legs dangling from the expensive executive chair that had been designed for someone 3 times her size. Her tiny fingers flew across the keyboard with a speed and precision that defied not only her age, but the laws of physics as Alexander understood them. He watched in complete amazement as lines of complex code appeared on the screen, intricate algorithms and programming structures that he could barely comprehend, despite his own extensive technical background and computer science degree from MIT. "There," Emma said softly, pointing to a section of code that looked like complete gibberish to Alexander's untrained eye. "That's where they hid their weapon. See how this subroutine looks completely normal and innocent, but it has an extra parameter hidden inside it that shouldn't exist. It's been collecting information about your company's financial patterns and waiting patiently for someone to send it a trigger command." Alexander leaned closer, squinting at the screen and trying to follow her explanation. "I'm sorry, but I don't see what you're seeing. It all looks like random letters and numbers to me. Emma's fingers continued typing at lightning speed as she patiently explained her process. Most people look at computer code like they're reading a book, line by line, left to right, following the words in order. But I see it like a giant picture, like a puzzle where all the pieces have to fit together perfectly to create something beautiful. When something doesn't belong, when a piece is in the wrong place or doesn't match the pattern, it stands out to me like a bright red balloon floating in a field of white flowers. Behind them, Maria sat in a corner chair holding Jake, both of them watching in silent amazement as Emma worked her magic. The baby seemed to sense the importance of the moment, staying unusually quiet and calm in his mother's arms instead of demanding attention or crying for food as he normally would. "How did you learn to do this?" Alexander asked, genuinely curious about how a child could have developed such extraordinary skills. "Where did you get this kind of training?" Emma paused in her typing for just a moment, a small smile crossing her face as she remembered happier times. "When I was 5 years old, I found a broken laptop computer in the dumpster behind our apartment building. Someone had thrown it away because they thought it was completely dead and couldn't be fixed. Mama let me keep it, thinking it would just be a toy for me to play pretend with. But I figured out how to fix it by watching YouTube videos on the computers at the public library. Once I got it working again, I started learning everything I possibly could about how computers think and communicate with each other." She resumed typing, her young face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the monitor. "The attack on your company came from someone who knew your system very, very well. They planted this virus months ago, probably during what looked like a routine software update that nobody would question. It's been learning your patterns, studying when you make your biggest transactions, memorizing your security protocols, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike when it would cause the maximum amount of damage." Alexander's phone buzzed with another emergency notification, the sound making his heart skip a beat. His stock price had dropped another 15% in just the last hour. News outlets were beginning to pick up the story, and social media was already buzzing with rumors and speculation. Investor confidence was plummeting rapidly, and he could feel the weight of thousands of jobs hanging in the balance. "Emma, I believe in you completely, but we're running out of time very quickly," he said, trying to keep the panic out of his voice. "Every single minute that passes, more damage is done to the company's reputation and trustworthiness. Even if we manage to recover all the money, the trust of our clients and investors might be gone forever. Some damage can't be undone with code." Emma's typing became more frantic, her small brow furrowed in intense concentration. I know. I can feel the pressure too. I'm almost there, I promise. I can see the exact pathway they used to get into your system, but I need to trace it back carefully without triggering their fail-safes and emergency protocols. If I move too quickly or make the wrong move, they'll realize we found them and could delete all the evidence and make everything disappear forever." Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the entire building, their shrill sound echoing off the walls and creating an atmosphere of genuine emergency. Security protocols were activating automatically, and Alexander's phone started ringing non-stop with calls from every department head in the company. The situation was escalating beyond just a financial crisis. It was becoming a full-scale emergency that could destroy everything he had spent his entire adult life building from the ground up. The alarms continued wailing like banshees throughout the Hayes Technologies building, their piercing sound creating an atmosphere of panic and urgency that could be felt in every corner of the 42 floors. Emma's small fingers moved even faster across the keyboard, her concentration so intense that she seemed completely oblivious to the chaos surrounding her. Alexander's phone was buzzing incessantly with calls from board members, investors, government officials, and media outlets, each ring adding another layer of pressure to an already impossible situation. "Sir, the FBI cybercrime unit has arrived," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom system. barely audible over the continuing alarms. "They're demanding immediate access to all computer systems, and they're threatening to seize everything if we don't cooperate right now." Alexander looked down at Emma, who was so deeply focused on her work that she hadn't even acknowledged the announcement. Her young face was a mask of concentration, her eyes darting between multiple windows of code that she had opened simultaneously. "Tell them I need just 5 more minutes," he replied, though he wasn't sure if Emma even had that much time before the attackers realized they had been discovered and activated whatever final protocols they had in place. "I can see them," Emma whispered suddenly, her voice filled with excitement and satisfaction. "The people who did this terrible thing to you, they're watching the news coverage right now, sitting somewhere safe and celebrating what they think is their victory. But they made a big mistake. They left a digital fingerprint in the celebration code they wrote for themselves." "What do you mean by that?" Alexander asked, leaning closer to the screen and trying to follow her explanation. Emma's small finger pointed to a section of code that looked like complete gibberish to Alexander's untrained eye. When programmers write malicious code, especially when they're feeling proud of themselves, sometimes they leave little hidden messages for themselves, like digital graffiti on a wall. This person wrote a secret message buried deep in the code that says, "Gotcha, Hayes. You thought you were so smart." But every single keystroke leaves a unique signature behind, like a fingerprint that can't be changed or hidden. "I can trace this message back to the exact computer that wrote it, and then find out who was using that computer." Maria gasped from across the room, her eyes wide with amazement. "Mija, you can really do that? You can find the actual people who did this?" "I'm doing it right now, Mama," Emma replied, never taking her eyes off the screen. "But the really hard part isn't finding them. That's actually pretty easy if you know what to look for. The hard part is reversing everything they did, without destroying all the evidence that the police and FBI will need to arrest them and put them in jail where they belong." Alexander's heart pounded in his chest as he watched lines of code scroll past, faster than he could possibly read. Numbers and letters flashed by in patterns that meant nothing to him, but apparently told Emma everything she needed to know. "Emma, the FBI agents are getting really impatient. My assistant says they're about to override my request and take control of all the systems whether I like it or not." 30 more seconds, Emma said, her voice steady and confident despite the enormous pressure. "I need to copy their attack method exactly, and then reverse it like rewinding a movie. Every single transaction they moved, I'm moving back to where it belongs. Every file they corrupted or damaged, I'm repairing with the backup data they didn't know existed." Suddenly, the screens around the office began showing completely different numbers. The stock price, which had been falling like a stone for hours, stopped its descent and began slowly climbing back up. Transaction records that had shown massive losses started correcting themselves in real time. Account balances that had shown 0 began repopulating with their original amounts, growing larger by the second. "It's actually working," Alexander breathed, hardly believing what he was seeing with his own eyes. "Emma, you're really doing it." Emma continued typing furiously, sweat beading on her young forehead despite the air conditioning. "I'm not just fixing what they broke," she explained between keystrokes. "I'm making sure they can never ever do this again to you or anyone else. I'm creating a protective shield around your entire system that learns from attacks and adapts to new threats automatically. It's like giving your computer network an immune system that gets stronger every time someone tries to hurt it." The office door burst open with tremendous force, and 3 FBI agents in dark suits rushed in, followed by Alexander's panicked assistant and several building security guards. "Sir, we need immediate access to all systems right now." The lead agent stopped mid-sentence as he caught sight of the screens showing the miraculous recovery taking place in real time. "How is this even possible?" he asked, staring at the rapidly improving numbers and data streams. "Our best experts said this would take weeks to fix, if it could be fixed at all." Alexander looked down at Emma, who had finally stopped typing and was now reaching for baby Jake, who had fallen asleep peacefully in his mother's arms during all the chaos and excitement. "Gentlemen," Alexander said with a mixture of incredible pride and complete amazement, "I'd like you to meet the youngest cybersecurity expert in the entire world." 3 hours later, the Hayes Technologies building had completely transformed from a scene of panic, despair, and impending doom into one of celebration, disbelief, and cautious optimism. The FBI agents, who had initially been skeptical of Alexander's claims about a 7-year-old computer genius, had spent the last 2 hours thoroughly verifying every aspect of Emma's work. Not only had she successfully reversed the devastating cyber attack, but she had also provided them with enough digital evidence to track down and arrest the perpetrators. A group of 3 disgruntled former employees who had been planning their elaborate revenge scheme for over 8 months. Alexander sat in his leather office chair, still trying to process everything that had happened in what felt like both the longest and shortest day of his entire life. Emma was curled up in the large guest chair nearby, finally allowing herself to rest after her incredible feat, while Jake slept peacefully in her protective arms. Maria sat beside them in another chair, tears of relief, gratitude, and overwhelming pride streaming down her weathered cheeks as she watched her extraordinary daughter. "Mr. Hayes," Agent Rodriguez, the lead FBI investigator, said as he prepared to leave with his team, "What this young lady accomplished here today is nothing short of extraordinary. She not only saved your company from complete financial ruin, but she potentially prevented similar attacks on dozens of other businesses that these criminals were planning to target next. The security system she designed and implemented in real time is more sophisticated and effective than anything our own cybersecurity experts have seen in their entire careers." Alexander nodded, still watching Emma with a sense of wonder that hadn't diminished even slightly. "Agent Rodriguez, what happens now? To Emma and her family, I mean. Are there any legal issues we need to be concerned about?" The agent smiled warmly, his stern professional demeanor softening as he looked at the sleeping child. "Well, sir, that's not really an FBI matter anymore, but if I were in your position, I'd make absolutely sure that brilliant mind gets every opportunity to flourish and grow. The world desperately needs more people like her, people who use their gifts to help others instead of hurting them." After the agents and security personnel left, the office fell into a comfortable silence. Alexander approached Emma, who was now awake but still holding her sleeping brother protectively, as if she couldn't quite believe that their nightmare might finally be over. "Emma," he said softly, kneeling beside her chair so they could speak at eye level, "I want to keep every single promise I made to you today. I want to make sure both you and Jake have everything you need. The best education money can buy, healthcare, opportunities, and most importantly, a loving family. But I need to ask you something very important first." Emma looked up at him with those intelligent brown eyes that seemed to hold wisdom far beyond her 7 years on Earth. "Would you and Jake like to come live with me permanently? Not as my employees or helpers, but as my real family. I want to legally adopt both of you if you and your mother agree to it." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but for the first time all day, they were tears of pure joy and relief. "You really mean it, both of us together? You won't change your mind later?" "Both of you, forever," Alexander confirmed without hesitation. "Jake will have the best possible future, and you'll have access to every resource you need to develop your incredible gift. You could help so many people, Emma. You could literally change the world with what you can do." Maria stood up slowly, her own tears flowing freely as she struggled to find words adequate for the moment. "Mr. Hayes, I don't know how to begin thanking you. Emma has always been special, different from other children. But I never imagined something like this could happen. You're giving them opportunities I could never provide, no matter how hard I worked." Alexander stood and faced Maria directly. "Maria, You raised the most extraordinary daughter I've ever met. Your love, support, and sacrifice gave her the confidence and moral foundation to take the risk that saved my company today. I want to make sure you're part of this new family too. If you'll have me, I'd be honored if you'd stay on, not as an employee but as family." As the sun set over Manhattan, casting golden light through the floor-to-ceiling windows and painting the office in warm, hopeful colors, Emma looked up at Alexander with a smile that seemed to illuminate the entire room. "Mr. Hayes," she said quietly, her voice filled with happiness and anticipation, "I think this is the beginning of something really wonderful for all of us. Jake is going to love having a daddy, and I can't wait to learn everything you can teach me about helping people." Alexander smiled back, knowing with absolute certainty that his life had been forever changed by a hungry 7-year-old girl who saw the world differently than anyone else. He had lost $900 million that morning, but by evening he had gained something infinitely more valuable: a family, a purpose, and a future filled with possibilities he had never dared to imagine. 6 months had passed since that life-changing day, and the Hayes mansion in the prestigious Upper East Side had become something Alexander never thought possible: a real home filled with laughter, wonder, and the kind of joy that only children could bring. The sprawling estate, with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers, had been transformed from a cold showpiece into a warm sanctuary where Emma's brilliant mind could flourish and baby Jake could grow up surrounded by love and unlimited possibilities. Emma had adapted to her new life with remarkable grace, though Alexander often caught glimpses of the profound intelligence that still amazed him daily. She had her own fully equipped computer lab on the 3rd floor, complete with the most advanced hardware money could buy, but she spent most of her time in the family room, helping Jake learn to walk and teaching him simple words. The transformation in both children had been extraordinary. Jake was thriving with proper nutrition and medical care, while Emma had blossomed into a confident young girl who no longer carried the weight of the world on her small shoulders. "Daddy Alex," Emma called from the kitchen, her voice echoing through the hallway. She had started calling him that 3 months ago, and every time she said it, Alexander felt his heart swell with pride and love he never knew existed. Jake said his first real word today. Alexander rushed into the kitchen, where Maria was preparing lunch, and Jake was sitting in his high chair, babbling happily while playing with colorful blocks. The baby had grown considerably, his cheeks now full and rosy, his eyes bright with curiosity and mischief. Gone were the days of hunger and uncertainty. Jake was becoming the happy, healthy toddler he was always meant to be. "What did he say?" Alexander asked, picking up Jake and spinning him gently in the air, causing the little boy to giggle with pure delight. "He said Emma," she announced proudly, her face glowing with happiness. "He's been trying to say it for weeks, but this morning it came out perfectly clear. He loves his big sister so much." Alexander felt tears forming in his eyes as he watched the bond between the siblings. In the past 6 months, he had learned that love wasn't just an emotion. It was a daily choice, a commitment to putting someone else's needs before your own. These children had taught him what it really meant to be a family, and he couldn't imagine his life without them. "That's incredible, sweetheart," he said, settling Jake back into his chair. "You've been such a wonderful teacher to him." But Emma's expression suddenly grew serious, and Alexander noticed the familiar look she got when her brilliant mind was processing something complex. "Daddy Alex, I need to tell you something important. Last night, when I was working on my computer, I found something strange in the news reports about other companies." Alexander's attention sharpened immediately. Even though the attack on Hayes Technologies had been resolved, Emma had continued monitoring cybersecurity threats as a hobby, often identifying vulnerabilities that she reported to the appropriate authorities. Her unofficial work had already prevented 3 smaller attacks on other businesses. "What did you find?" he asked, sitting down at the kitchen table so they could talk at eye level. Emma pulled out a tablet and showed him several news articles she had bookmarked. "There have been 7 more cyber attacks in the past month, all targeting companies that help children, orphanages, schools, children's hospitals. The attacks are getting more sophisticated, and they're all using variations of the same code signature I found in our attack. Alexander's blood ran cold as he read the headlines. Emma, are you saying someone is specifically targeting organizations that help kids? Not just someone, Emma said quietly, her young voice heavy with concern. I think it's the same group that attacked your company. The people the FBI arrested might have been working for someone bigger, someone who's still out there and really angry that their plan failed. Maria stopped her cooking and turned to listen, her maternal instincts immediately sensing danger. Alexander felt a familiar knot forming in his stomach as he realized that their peaceful new life might be under threat. Have you told anyone else about this? He asked. Emma shook her head. I wanted to tell you first. But Daddy Alex, I think they might try to hurt us because I stopped them before. What if they come after Jake and me? Alexander reached over and took Emma's small hands in his own. Sweetheart, I promise you that nothing will happen to you or Jake. We have the best security money can buy, and if there really is a threat out there, we'll deal with it together. But I need you to show me everything you've found. As Emma began explaining her discoveries, Alexander realized that their story was far from over. The brilliant little girl who had saved his company might have inadvertently made herself a target, and he would do whatever it took to protect his new family from the shadows that seemed to be gathering around them. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor that would change everything once again. Alexander was in his home office, reviewing Emma's research about the mysterious cyber attacks, when his head of security announced that FBI agent Rodriguez was at the front gate requesting an urgent meeting. The same agent who had witnessed Emma's miraculous work 6 months ago now stood in Alexander's study with a grim expression that immediately put everyone on edge. Mr. Hayes, Emma, Agent Rodriguez said as they gathered in the comfortable family room. I'm afraid I have some disturbing news that concerns your family directly. Emma, who had been playing with Jake on the carpet, immediately stood up and moved closer to Alexander. Her intuitive understanding of adult emotions had always been remarkably acute, and she could sense the tension in the room. The 3 men we arrested for the attack on Hayes Technologies have been talking, Agent Rodriguez continued. They've provided information about a larger criminal organization that has been targeting tech companies and charitable organizations across the country. This group calls themselves the Reset, and their goal is to destroy what they see as corrupt capitalist systems and redistribute wealth through cyber warfare. Alexander felt his heart racing. Agent Rodriguez, are you saying my family is in danger? I'm afraid so, the agent replied grimly. According to our sources, the Reset has identified Emma as a significant threat to their operations. They believe that her ability to counter their attacks makes her a primary target. They're planning something they call Operation Clean Slate, a coordinated attack on multiple targets simultaneously, designed to cause maximum economic disruption. Emma's face went pale, but her voice remained steady. They want to hurt more innocent people, and they think I'll try to stop them again. That's exactly right, Agent Rodriguez confirmed. But Emma, we have a proposition for you. The FBI's Cybersecurity Division wants to offer you a special consultation position. You would work with our top experts to help prevent these attacks before they happen. Of course, you would have full protection, and your family's safety would be our top priority. Alexander immediately shook his head. Absolutely not. Emma is 7 years old. I won't put her in harm's way, no matter how important this is. But Emma stepped forward, her young face showing a determination that reminded Alexander of the day she had first offered to help him. Daddy Alex, if I don't help, how many innocent people will get hurt? How many families like ours will lose everything? Emma, you don't understand how dangerous these people are, Alexander said, his voice rising with emotion. They're not just hackers. They're criminals willing to destroy lives to make a point. But I do understand, Emma replied quietly. I understand that sometimes people with special gifts have to use them to help others, even when it's scary. You taught me that being part of a family means protecting the people you love, and sometimes that means protecting people you don't even know yet." Maria, who had been listening quietly while holding Jake, finally spoke up. "Mija, your papa is right. This is too dangerous for a little girl." Emma walked over to Maria and gently touched her arm. "Mama, remember what you always told me when I was little and scared? You said that God gives special gifts to special people, and it's their responsibility to use those gifts to help others. Maybe this is why I can see things that other people can't." Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. "Emma, if you agree to help us, you wouldn't be working alone. You'd have a team of the best cybersecurity experts in the country supporting you, and most importantly, you'd be working from a secure location where your family would be completely safe." Alexander looked at Emma's determined face and felt a mixture of pride and terror. This extraordinary little girl, who should have been worried about homework and playground games, was instead thinking about saving innocent people from financial ruin. How had his life become a situation where a 7-year-old was being asked to help fight international criminals? "I need time to think about this," Alexander said finally. "This is not a decision I can make lightly." But Emma had already made up her mind. "Daddy Alex, I want to help. These bad people hurt our family once, and now they want to hurt other families. If I can stop them, then I have to try." As Alexander looked into Emma's determined brown eyes, he realized that the little girl who had saved his company was about to face her greatest challenge yet. The secure FBI facility in Quantico, Virginia, was unlike anything Emma had ever seen. Located deep underground, the Cybersecurity Command Center looked like something from a science fiction movie, with wall-to-wall monitors displaying data streams from around the world, and dozens of agents working at sophisticated computer stations. Alexander had insisted on staying with Emma throughout the entire operation, and Jake and Maria were safely housed in a protected wing of the facility under round-the-clock security. "Welcome to Operation Safeguard," Agent Rodriguez said as he led Emma and Alexander through the high-tech facility. "This is where we monitor cyber threats against critical infrastructure, financial institutions, and government systems. Today, you're going to help us prevent the largest coordinated cyber attack in U.S. history." Emma's eyes were wide with wonder as she took in the impressive technology surrounding her. "How many bad people are we trying to stop?" "According to our intelligence, the reset has recruited over 50 hackers from around the world," Special Agent Sarah Chen, the FBI's lead cybersecurity expert, explained as she joined them. "They're planning to attack banks, hospitals, power grids, and major corporations simultaneously at exactly noon Eastern Time today. If they succeed, it could crash the entire economy and put millions of lives at risk." Alexander felt sick to his stomach. "And you think Emma can stop all of that?" Agent Chen smiled warmly at Emma. "Emma, we've studied your work on the Hayes Technologies attack, and frankly, it's unlike anything we've ever seen. Your ability to see patterns and connections in code is extraordinary. We believe you might be able to identify their attack vectors before they execute their plan." Emma nodded seriously. "Where do I start?" For the next 3 hours, Emma worked alongside the FBI's top cybersecurity experts, her small fingers flying across multiple keyboards as she analyzed thousands of lines of code and data patterns. Alexander watched in amazement as his 7-year-old daughter, for that's what she had become in his heart, collaborated with seasoned professionals who had decades of experience. "There," Emma suddenly exclaimed, pointing to a section of code on one of the monitors. "I found their command center. They're using a distributed network to hide their location, but they made the same mistake as before. They left emotional signatures in their code." Agent Chen leaned over Emma's shoulder. "What do you mean by emotional signatures?" "When people write code, especially when they're angry or excited, they include little personal touches that reveal their feelings," Emma explained. "Look at this variable naming pattern. They're using words related to fire and destruction, but in a specific sequence that tells me they're working from multiple locations, but following orders from one central command. Alexander watched as the room full of experts began following Emma's lead. Their respect for her abilities evident in how carefully they listened to her explanations. Despite her age, she was clearly the most gifted person in the room. "Emma, can you trace the command center's location?" Agent Rodriguez asked. Emma's brow furrowed in concentration as she continued typing. "I think so, but they're using really sophisticated encryption. It's like they're speaking in a secret language that changes every few minutes." "How long do we have?" Agent Chen asked, checking her watch. The countdown clock on the wall showed 11:30 a.m. "I need 15 more minutes," Emma said, her voice steady despite the enormous pressure. "But I think I can do more than just find them. I think I can turn their own attack back on them." Alexander felt his heart racing as he realized that the fate of the entire country might rest in the hands of his 7-year-old daughter. But as he watched Emma work with calm determination, he knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. With only 10 minutes remaining until the planned attack, the tension in the FBI command center was palpable. Every agent in the room was watching Emma work, their faces a mixture of hope and disbelief as the 7-year-old girl raced against time to prevent a national catastrophe. Alexander stood behind her chair, his hands gently resting on her shoulders for support, while Agent Chen coordinated with field teams across the country. "Emma, talk to me," Agent Rodriguez said, his voice calm but urgent. "What are you seeing?" Emma's eyes never left the screen as her fingers continued their lightning-fast dance across the keyboard. "I found their weakness," she said, her young voice filled with excitement. "They're so proud of how smart they think they are that they built their attack to send a message when it's complete. But that message protocol is two-way, which means I can send something back to them." "What kind of something?" Agent Chen asked, leaning closer to watch Emma's work. "I'm creating a reverse virus," Emma explained, her concentration so intense that she seemed unaware of the dozens of adults hanging on her every word. "Instead of destroying their targets, it's going to trace back through their network and shut down their systems. It's like they're planning to shoot arrows at us, but I'm turning their arrows around to fly back at them." Alexander felt a surge of pride mixed with terror as he watched his daughter take on one of the most sophisticated criminal organizations in the world. "Emma, are you sure this will work?" "I'm sure, Daddy Alex," she replied confidently, "but I need everyone to be very quiet for the next few minutes. This is the hardest part, and I need to concentrate completely." The room fell silent except for the soft clicking of Emma's keyboard and the distant hum of computer servers. On the main screen, a map of the United States showed dozens of red dots representing the targets that the reset planned to attack. Each dot pulsed like a heartbeat, counting down to what could be the worst cyber attack in history. 2 minutes until attack time," Agent Chen announced softly. Emma suddenly stopped typing and leaned back in her chair. "It's done," she said simply. "I've sent my virus into their network. When they try to launch their attack, it will trigger my countermeasures instead." "What happens then?" Alexander asked. Emma smiled for the first time in hours. "Then all their computers will display a message that says, 'You've been stopped by a 7-year-old girl who believes in helping people instead of hurting them. Maybe you should try being nice for a change.'" Despite the tension, several agents chuckled at Emma's message. Agent Rodriguez shook his head in amazement. "Emma, you're going to put a lot of cybersecurity experts out of work." "1 minute," Agent Chen called out. Everyone in the room watched the countdown clock as it approached noon. At exactly 12 p.m. Eastern Time, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. But instead of the chaos that everyone expected, something extraordinary happened. The red dots on the map began turning green, one by one, as the Reset's attack was not only stopped, but completely reversed. "Incoming report from New York Field Office," an agent called out. "They're reporting that multiple hacker locations have been identified and are being raided simultaneously." "Chicago office confirms the same," another agent reported. The suspect's computers are displaying Emma's message. Agent Rodriguez turned to Emma with a look of absolute amazement. Emma, you didn't just stop their attack. You helped us locate and arrest the entire network. Emma stood up from her chair and walked over to Alexander, who immediately wrapped her in a huge hug. Daddy Alex, can we go home now? I want to see Jake and make sure he's okay. Alexander held his daughter tight, tears streaming down his face. Yes, sweetheart. Let's go home. You've saved enough people for one day. As they prepared to leave the facility, Agent Chen approached them with a serious expression. Emma, there's something you should know. The leader of the reset, the person who's been coordinating all these attacks, was captured in the raids. And you're not going to believe who it is. The revelation that Agent Chen was about to share would shock everyone in ways they never could have imagined. As Emma, Alexander, and the FBI team gathered around a secure monitor, Agent Chen pulled up a file that made Alexander's blood run cold. On the screen was the mugshot of someone he recognized immediately, Dr. Marcus Webb, his former business partner, and the man he had trusted with some of his company's most sensitive information. That's Dr. Webb, Alexander said, his voice barely a whisper. He helped me build Hayes Technologies in the early days. We had a falling out about 5 years ago, when I discovered he was embezzling money from the company. Emma looked up at Alexander with concern. You know the bad man who's been trying to hurt people? I thought I knew him, Alexander replied, still staring at the screen in disbelief. Marcus was brilliant, but he became obsessed with the idea that technology companies were destroying society. When I fired him and pressed charges, he swore he would make me pay for ruining his life. Agent Rodriguez pulled up additional files. Dr. Webb has been planning this revenge for years. According to the evidence we've recovered, he specifically recruited the Reset members by convincing them that wealthy tech entrepreneurs like you were the root of all economic inequality. His ultimate goal wasn't just to steal money. It was to completely destroy your company and everyone associated with it. Emma's expression grew sad as she processed this information. He wanted to hurt you because he was angry and jealous, but he ended up hurting lots of innocent people instead. That's exactly right, Agent Chen confirmed. What makes this even more disturbing is that Dr. Webb specifically studied your work, Emma. He knew about your involvement in stopping the original attack, and he's been developing countermeasures designed to defeat your methods. Alexander felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying he was planning to target Emma directly? According to his files, yes, Agent Rodriguez said grimly. Operation Clean Slate was actually a trap designed to lure Emma into helping the FBI, at which point his team would launch a secondary attack specifically targeting the FBI's systems while she was connected to them. Emma's eyes widened as she understood the implications. He wanted me to help stop one attack, so he could use that to launch an even bigger attack? Fortunately, your countermeasures were so effective that his backup plan never had a chance to activate, Agent Chen explained. But Emma, this means you weren't just fighting random criminals. You were fighting someone who knew you personally and was specifically trying to outsmart you. Alexander knelt down to Emma's level, his face serious with concern. Sweetheart, do you understand what this means? Dr. Webb studied your abilities and tried to find ways to defeat them. The fact that you still stopped him means you're even more special than we thought. Emma was quiet for a long moment, her brilliant mind processing the full scope of what had happened. Daddy Alex, Dr. Webb was wrong about something important. He thought that being smart meant using your abilities to hurt people who made you angry. But real intelligence means using your gifts to help people, even when they can't help you back. Agent Rodriguez smiled at Emma's wisdom. Emma, in all my years with the FBI, I've never worked with anyone who combined technical brilliance with such a good heart. Dr. Webb might have been smart, but he'll never be as smart as you because he forgot how to be kind. As they prepared to finally leave the FBI facility, Emma turned to Agent Chen with a question that surprised everyone. What will happen to Dr. Webb now? Will he go to prison forever? He'll face trial for cyber terrorism, which carries a very serious sentence, Agent Chen replied. Why do you ask? Emma looked thoughtful. I was wondering if maybe someone could teach him how to use his intelligence to help people instead of hurting them. Maybe if he learned how good it feels to make people happy instead of sad, he wouldn't want to be bad anymore. Alexander felt his heart swell with pride at his daughter's compassion. Even after everything Dr. Webb had put them through, Emma still believed in the possibility of redemption. As they finally headed home to their family, Alexander realized that Emma had taught him something invaluable about the true meaning of strength and forgiveness. 1 year later, the Hayes family had settled into a routine that balanced normalcy with the extraordinary circumstances of their lives. Emma had become something of a celebrity in cybersecurity circles, consulting with major tech companies and government agencies to improve their security systems. But Alexander had been careful to ensure that her work never interfered with her childhood, and she spent most of her time being a regular 8-year-old girl who happened to be raising her little brother with infinite love and patience. Jake, now 2 years old, was a happy, energetic toddler who followed Emma everywhere and seemed to understand that his big sister was special. He had started calling Alexander Dada 6 months ago, a moment that had moved the young millionaire to tears. The little boy showed no signs of Emma's technical genius, but he displayed an emotional intelligence and joyful spirit that brought light to everyone around him. "Emma, are you ready?" Alexander called from the bottom of the grand staircase. Today was a special day. They were attending the opening ceremony of the Emma Hayes Foundation for Cybersecurity Education, a non-profit organization that Alexander had established to teach underprivileged children about technology and computer safety. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, wearing a beautiful blue dress that Maria had helped her choose, her long, dark hair styled in elegant curls. She was carrying Jake, who was dressed in a tiny suit and tie, looking absolutely adorable as he clapped his hands with excitement. "We're ready, Daddy Alex," Emma said, carefully making her way down the stairs. "Jake insisted on wearing his special tie today because he says it makes him look important." Alexander smiled as he watched his children. Over the past year, he had learned that wealth meant nothing compared to the richness of having a real family. These 2 children had taught him about love, sacrifice, and the importance of using privilege to help others rather than just accumulate more for himself. As they drove to the foundation's headquarters, Emma was unusually quiet. Alexander noticed her thoughtful expression in the rearview mirror and decided to check on her. "What's on your mind?" "Sweetheart?" he asked. Emma looked out the window at the city passing by. "I was thinking about Dr. Webb. I got a letter from him last week." Alexander's attention sharpened immediately. "Emma, why didn't you tell me about this?" "Because I wanted to read it first and decide if it was important," she replied. "He wrote to say that he's been taking classes in prison about how to help people instead of hurting them. He said he was sorry for trying to hurt our family, and he asked if maybe someday I could teach him how to see code the way I do, but for good purposes, instead of bad ones." Alexander pulled over to the side of the road and turned to face Emma directly. "What do you think about that?" Emma considered the question carefully. "I think people can change if they really want to. Maybe Dr. Webb was just angry and lost, and now he's finding his way back to being good. If he really wants to help people, maybe we should give him a chance to prove it." "Emma, you're 8 years old. You shouldn't have to worry about rehabilitating criminals," Alexander said gently. "But Daddy Alex, if I can help him become good again, then maybe he can help other people too. Isn't that what our foundation is for? Teaching people to use technology to make the world better." Alexander felt that familiar surge of pride and amazement at his daughter's wisdom. "Emma, what did you want to do about his letter?" "I want to write him back and tell him about our foundation," she said. "Maybe when he gets out of prison someday, he can volunteer to teach kids about computer safety, but only if he proves that he really changed his heart." As they continued their drive to the foundation opening, Alexander reflected on how much his life had changed since that desperate day when Emma had first offered to help him. He had thought he was saving her and Jake, but in reality, they had saved him. They had taught him that true success wasn't measured in dollars or stock prices, but in the positive impact you could have on other people's lives. At the foundation ceremony, Emma gave a speech that brought tears to everyone's eyes. She talked about how technology should be used to bring people together, not tear them apart, and how every child deserved the chance to learn and grow regardless of their circumstances. As Alexander watched his daughter speak with confidence and compassion to an audience of hundreds, he knew that the little girl who had once been hungry and desperate had grown into someone who would change the world. And standing beside him, holding his hand tightly, was Jake, the little boy who would grow up knowing that family wasn't about blood or money, but about love, loyalty, and the commitment to take care of each other no matter what challenges life might bring. The Hayes family had found their happily ever after, not in the fairy tale sense of perfect endings, but in the real-world understanding that love, combined with the courage to help others, could overcome any obstacle and create something beautiful from even the most desperate circumstances.